Welcome, flip clock fans. This is a Seth Thomas wall clock, very large Seth Thomas wall clock. The front face here is 9 inches wide, but it widens as you go back to the back up to 11 inches. So clearly it's an oval, but the digits are large. You can see here we've got several problems here, cracks, and it seems pretty evident this clock was dropped. I've taken out the screws here so the cover will come off. But this clock was on Etsy as a non-working clock, and so I accepted the challenge to see if I could fix this clock. Now, one of the main reasons is I've got one of these already with black digits, and I thought that clock right there would look good with white digits. I'm partial to white digits, so at the very least I want to get these digits off here, but I really want to get this clock working. So I'd use this as an opportunity to see if we can take a look at this clock, see what makes it tick, and see if we can't fix it. So we're just giving it a look over here. If you've never seen one of these mechanisms, it's going to be curious right away. You see there's a lot of clockworks in here. There's a balance wheel there and electronics as well. At the top you'll see a motor, an electric motor, obviously a DC electric motor. This is powered by a C-cell 1.5 volt battery. Here's our compartment here. No evident problems here. Now you see we've got a positive side here with no evident lead that comes off of it. You can see the negative has a blue lead that comes off of it, but the red does not now. That'd be nice if that was all it was, wouldn't it? But the positive comes out through here, goes through this aluminum, and is redirected to that line right there. So that's where the positive comes out from the battery. That's not a problem at all. Now you might not be able to see this very well, but that can on that motor is moving. So you're looking at that thinking, oh boy, we've got a tore up motor here possibly. Or maybe the motor cap just popped off with that blow that we're suspecting when the person dropped it. We're going to just throw this in here to see what happens. And this is the first go around that I've done on this clock. Now what should be happening at this point is that motor should be turning. And it's off the gear, so it should be turning continuously. We'll have to look at this a little more closely so I can try to explain how this mechanism works. But there should be power to that motor right now, and there's not. So what you're not going to see me do is I'm going to check continuity of the different wires as they go along here and try to figure out what's the problem. Now, there's the balance wheel. It moves for a couple seconds and then it'll stop. It's just bouncing back and forth because of the spring on the balance wheel. The crazy thing about this clock is it is a wind-up clock, but that motor not only flips the digits, but it also winds the small spring there. And as soon as that motor stops working, it'll wind down fairly quickly. So it just winds enough to keep the clock running. And it's dependent upon that motor for everything. But again, the motor doesn't run the clock. The clock is run by clockworks, by tick-tock, but flips by the movement of the motor. Now that there is an arm. That's a magnetic pad on the end of that is up against that. There's a switch there. It's called a reed switch. And when a magnet comes close to it, it should be activated. Now this clock we got online at Etsy. It was billed as a non-working clock, and they were very upfront about the condition of the clock. The seller did not hide anything about what was going on. Lots of pieces missing here. But the seller's right, it's a very cool clock. And it is from 1972. So this is a magazine from 1972. You can see the green was called a Catalog 848 and the white was a 849. They called it the Speed Read Battery Wall. Anything that had digits, whether it's rolling or flip clock, it was Speed Read to Seth Thomas. I've got the motor off and I've double checked it. It does work when power gets to it. It's just a matter of getting the power to it. I'm checking out the gears as best I can. I'm suspecting that the blow has caused problems, but I can't prove it yet. So there's our reed switch. It takes the negative, and once the magnet's connected, it should have continuity, and it does. I took a tester, and when the magnet comes up against that reed switch, it allows the current to flow. But you look here, now that's strange. That's just loose there. That could have happened. It wasn't soldered properly. That would have held in a blow, but maybe it had worked for a while, and it must have been a pretty heavy blow, but that's definitely not working. We're going to go ahead and resolder that at some point. But I'll give you a heads up. That's not the only thing that's wrong with this clock. There's 3 separate things wrong with it. The one being the motor here. That can popped off, and it allowed it to come off that gear. But now that I've got that secured, it's not going to. Again, the reed switch is here. So when I put the battery in, it should cause that motor to move. It's going to move the mechanism. It should flip. Now, the only reason that didn't flip to 0, was because I didn't have it forward enough. The digits weren't advanced enough. So that's working now. But the balance wheel does not keep going. And again, it's going to go because it's been wound up by that motor just a second ago. You saw that move. It wound the spring. Now, it's going a little longer than it did before, if you may notice. It wants to go, but it's not going all the way. Now, it doesn't seem to be impeded. It just slows down and stops. So that points towards everything's connected, but the most likely culprit here is that Clockwork's mechanism needs to be oiled. That's crazy that there's 3 separate things. You had the motor, the wire coming loose from the battery compartment, and the fact that this clock needs to be oiled. But that's going to be what it's going to be. We're going to have to go through here, and there it goes. It's going to go for a little while there. You know, I have had clocks before similar to this, and just getting them going after a while, they'll start going. Now, I've got an oil on that. That's a coin there, fake coin from a vacation or something, novelty coin, and I've got oil on there. You may not see that. And I'm trying to put it on there with a toothpick. You want to get to the points that need it. The balance wheel, you have to oil it this way. It has to go from the inside. It's resting in these rockers. You can't go from the outside. But a lot of the other gears, this one for here, I didn't have to go from the inside. I'm doing it anyway. Maybe there's gunk in there. But a lot of these other gears will have oil wells on the outside of the plates being the left and right wall there. So they'll have little indentions where it wants to have oil in there. Not a lot. They say if you put too much oil, it'll actually pull it out by capillary action and just pull the oil out. So you want a little drop of oil in the oil wells. Now there's one right there. There's an oil well right there. Now that's probably too much oil. I'll get the rest of that out in a second. But what I'm trying to do is to see if by working it here, it'll start working itself loose. And as you can probably tell, it started getting better. Well, here we are. I've put this up on a block and looking at that thinking, hey, this might be a cool way to keep this clock, keep it displayed. So after a lot of work, we've got a mechanism that's ticking away. And it doesn't want to stop. It wants to keep going. We'll try to stop it here. And it's difficult to stop. But it actually started going before I turned it. It wants to keep going. Now I've stopped it. And when you got a clock like this, sometimes you can just take it and shake it like that to get that balance wheel started. And this is running great. So the motor's working now. The clockwork is working just fine. Again, I oiled it just like you saw me do. Didn't have to take it apart. Now, that's the pad. It's back where it belongs. And after the time passes correctly, that'll move forward. There just did. And it causes that motor to run just for enough time to flip the clock and rewind the mechanism. So we're left with this case. Pretty beat up. It's got some stuff we could use on it. We could refinish this and get it cleaned up. So we've got a white face that we might use at some point, and I do like the green color. But I've got plans for that clock mechanism. I think the white digits are going to look good. in my other clock. Let's see if it works. It's working just like it's supposed to. So there it is. We've got it up in the clock. It's now got white digits. And I like it. I don't know what you think about it. I think it's classy. Well, thanks for taking the time.